the guys that ride in the Green Bay area, like Mitch said, we often ride together. A lot of the training rides, we'll coordinate and we'll make sure that we'll bring a few of us with, even if we're not on the same team. And it really does make for a good cycling community. And we get to know how each other ride. That's the interesting part is, and all of a sudden Mitch knows my weaknesses and he knows where I'm good. And it's no secret what he and his teammates are good at. So preparing for a race, knowing who's going to be there, that's the extra element. And when you're outnumbered 4-1 at the start line, you just kind of, oh boy, you just got to swallow and say, here we go. And yeah, Mitch and his teammates, they put together a plan. It was very obvious. And that plan was executed very well.
From KOM Cycling and Michigan Midpack Media, welcome to the Dirty Chain Podcast, the podcast that covers the cycling scene from the viewpoint of the Michigan Midpack. I am your host, Trevor, and on this episode, we hear about the Lone Wolf Gravel Race out of Iron Mountain, Michigan, with race founder James Morrow and repeat competitors Dan Teaters and Mitch Edbauer. Folks, we are 2023 at what seems to be probably the height of gravel racing. From its humble beginnings of grassroots mass start events, gravel, of course, has evolved and grown in popularity in a way I think few of us could have ever imagined. I mean, this year alone, we've seen the first U.S. National Gravel Championships. We just saw the second Gravel Worlds that took place in Italy that seemed to be a bit more accepted by the whole gravel community. There's still an extremely popular national race series with a Lifetime Grand Prix. And it just seems like more and more professional cyclists are now identifying themselves as gravel pros. And hey, I love it. I think it's exciting as a fan, as an athlete. I can participate in some of these larger events. I can follow these athletes. But as much as I love this, and I love the larger races and the huge events, part of me still connects more with these smaller, local, grassroots events that started this whole trend in the first place. Races like the Lone Wolf. Now, this episode serves a couple different purposes. One, as we discuss later, while I was aware of the race of the Lone Wolf, I didn't know too much about it, and I've never raced it, and I think it's mostly because of how far away it is from. I'm downstate Michigan, and it's pretty darn far up in the UP. So I was excited to hear more about its history from race creator and bike bag fabricator James Morrow. But two, what we're about to hear is a real behind-the-scenes look at competition and tactics during racing. Three-peat winner Dan Teaters and three-peat competitor Mitch Edbauer share a really cool story about what went down this year, what team tactics Mitch implemented to attempt to unseat Dan, and what resulted because of that. And in a way, I think this kind of story, this kind of experience, as you will hear, is one that can only exist within local grassroots races within the local grassroots scene, where you race and ride with some of the same people race after race, year after year. Something I think many of you will resonate with. So let's jump right in. The Lone Wolf with James Morrow, Mitch Edbauer, and 3-time winner Dan Teaters. Yeah, thank you, gentlemen, for joining me today, this afternoon. We got a full house here to talk about the Lone Wolf, the gravel race that happened last weekend, right? Was it October 8th?
9th? Yeah, on
9th?
Sunday.
Okay. So, joining me now, we have James Morrow, the founder of the race, and then 2 athletes, 2 participants, Dan Teaters and Mitch Edbauer. Besides your names, can we kind of go around and could you give me a little bit of introduction? James, you want to start, and then we'll maybe move to Dan and Mitch?
Sure. Yeah, I'm James Morrow, the founder and creator of the Lone Wolf. Down in Iron Mountain in 2020, trying to find a as much gravel route as possible, and me and my brother-in-law basically found that loop, and I think it was like 42 miles. We adjusted it to get it to right at 50 on one of our spring rides. Ran up on a nice big gray wolf, all mangy, and wouldn't get off the road for us, and that was kind of what established the name. And just sitting around, and I just thought I knew there was enough gravel racers in the area to kind of showcase that being a route, and thought it'd be really cool to see some people lay it down out there. And so it was just kind of an idea, and honestly thought there'd be like 10 people that showed up, mostly friends or something, just to support it and have a party pace. But people showed up even the first year, so it was pretty cool.
What was that? What was the first year?
2020.
2020.
I think it would have been 21. Yeah.
21. Okay.
Yep.
Dan, I know that you, of course, rode it this year, but you have, am I right in that you've ridden it or raced it every single year that it's been around?
Yeah, I was trying to think this morning how I had heard about it first, and I think there was just some word of mouth and maybe a post on Facebook, and I thought, hey, this looks like an interesting little event. Go up and check it out, and it was a small grassroots but well run. Everybody seemed really excited for it. Everybody was pretty happy and jovial, and that's really, it kind of makes the event. Everybody enjoyed themselves. So I thought, hey, this is kind of cool. I'm going to keep coming back, and it's been a good event ever since. And the changes that were made in the last year or two added a little distance, added a little spice and some flavor to the course, which was definitely appreciated. I enjoyed that. And James has done a good job putting on the event. So I'd be happy to come back again and continue my participation in it next year.
Dan,
your winning streak.
Your winning streak. Oh, we'll get to that in a second. But Dan, are you predominantly a gravel rider, road rider, and where do you live and where do you ride out of mostly?
Yeah, so I grew up in the Sheboygan area, and then I went to school at UWGB in Green Bay, and I've kind of been there ever since. I left for a short while after I graduated. I was in Texas, did a lot of road racing with some top elite level road racers down in that area.
Okay.
Learned a lot when I was down there in just those short 2 years, but came back to the Green Bay area in 2009 and been in the area ever since. And as far as my disciplines go, I'm kind of a jack of all trades. I'm kind of a goofball. I've got a long history of mountain bike racing. I've done a lot of high level road races and crits. And ever since the gravel stuff popped up, it's really been kind of a fun infusion of both. You've got the road tactics, you've got the skill of mountain biking, not to mention my cyclocross background. Yeah, I just kind of a jack of all trades. I just enjoy it all.
That's great. Um, Mitch, what's your history with the Lone Wolf? Was this your first year this year? Have you done it previous years? And then yeah, give us a little background on your cycling, riding, racing.
Sure. So I have also done the Lone Wolf all 3 years.
Okay, great.
So I'm a native Yooper. Grew up in Kingsford, Michigan, which is a sister town to Iron Mountain, where James puts on the race. So it's a nice local event for me. Good reason to get back home, spend some time with my parents. When it comes to racing, like Dan said, I went to school at Michigan Tech. Had a lot of buddies that were into mountain biking, so kind of learned to mountain bike very poorly. Well, I spent my years up at Michigan Tech, graduated in 2009 as well, moved down to Green Bay, and just found more of a passion in cycling. There weren't as many nearby trails for mountain biking as Houghton, Michigan, so I kind of picked up my first road bike. Started, actively training, got into the whole triathlon thing. Did that for a little bit. But I guess kind of like Dan, I pretty much participate in as many in varied races as I can. I don't have quite the tenured background like Dan does, but I've lost several cyclocross races and I've lost several mountain bike races and continue to lose gravel races, but I always have a good time doing it. So,
yeah, fantastic. So yeah, we kind of covered a little bit with that about when the race began, a little bit about what kind of a course it is, a little bit, but I'm interested in the race history. Dan, you mentioned that this year there were some additions that made things a little more fun, a little more spicy. But how has this race kind of progressed from the beginning? James, from day one, from race one, what kind of a race was it? What did you hope to put on? And how long of a race? I mean, you said it was around 50 miles, correct?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
It was a 50 miler from the front door. And then once we figured out where we could potentially start and stop it, it came out to like 42.
Okay.
I was a little bit bummed about, it's not very, a lot of people like to put, 100 mile and it's like 115 miles or something like that. But I actually reached out to Mitch and asked him, you think people are going to kind of be bent out of shape that it's, a little bit shorter? And he assured me that, it wasn't going to be a problem. So we just ran with it from there. And then we got permission from it was at Fumey Lake, and they have a board and it's kind of a protected area. And that was a little bit of a struggle to get them. They have some gates and stuff that we had to get open. And the first year worked out great and it went off without a hitch. And then the following year, we did the same procedure, asked for permission, and they weren't going to allow us to open the gates, which I kind of seen as a little bit of a roadblock for keeping the flow, especially the gates were at the finish line for the thing. So people are going to have to get off and go around. This is the time to sprint. You got like the last 2 miles going around in a 2-track. So we made the call. We found another alternative route to get up and connect to the original route. But I think it was about 10 more miles of pretty aggressive, chunky stuff. It clipped a piece of private land. We had like a godsend because DNR had just put in a new section of trail to bypass that for ORV and stuff. So last year it was pretty fresh. A lot of dozer tracks for a few miles. And I remember the first year when Dan came through with Mark Crowns and he said, that last little bit was kind of blasphemy because it was beautiful. It was brand new paved road for 6 miles or whatever it was, and then you get a little bit of 2-track. So I was happy to give him that for the ending, and he wasn't super excited about it.
Like a cherry on top, if you will.
Yeah. It was nice to see a little bit of struggle out of him coming through.
James, you mentioned that it was you hoped that maybe a couple people would show up the first year. Maybe you thought it'd be like you and your buddies, but you had a pretty good turnout. Have you seen progressive growth each year?
It's actually stayed pretty close to the same volume every year. But a lot of, it stays the same, but a lot of new people are coming and trying it. And that was kind of the idea, is just to get people, riding around that course in the fall. It's just kind of something to see. And, it's your typical UP gravel. And that area needed something. And that was kind of my passion for it. Was in 2020, I started a nonprofit, like I just call it an Iron Hill Cycling Team, to get it, just to be able to ask people for money and not make it seem like they're just giving James Morrow money, to create an event around there. And got a hold of Chris Schmidt and had him make up a poster. And every time we would get a sponsor, it gave us the ability, okay, now we can get a poster, and now we can kind of promote it a little bit more and throw it in some bike shops. And then we were able to get awards. And that's kind of what I figured, is as long as we have an image for it and awards, I mean, in a route, you basically have a race. So that was the idea. So it was pretty cool. The first year we basically just spent everything on the awards, which was really cool. They're like glow in the dark trophies. And then after that, then it was kind of cool. After that first year, there was a little, a few of my friends were actually interested in becoming board members and getting this thing going. There's a little bit of influx of money, and then we can kind of get a little bit more structure and more opinions and what people think. And it's been working out pretty cool.
That's great. You mentioned you kind of had a similar amount of participation, but I think that seeing returnees come back every year, that's got to be a good sign. And we have two of them here, of course.
Right.
I'm not as familiar with that far west in the UP. What makes that terrain unique? Or is it unique? Or what, so like, Dan, what's your favorite, like, unique part of the course? Or what do you love most about, like, the course in itself, the terrain and the...
I like courses that offer a variety of different terrain. It gives everybody an opportunity and a certain spot on the course to really excel. And hopefully, through the entirety of that race, the cream rises to the top. And it's the person that can manage the course and the conditions and the competition to the best of their ability and come out on top. So the Lone Wolf course it's just a prime example of that. It's not just smooth gravel the whole way. It's sections of smooth gravel. You've got a couple of paved sections. You've got some sections of gravel that are fist-sized gravel. It's small rocks. It's chunky. And then to finish off the race on what is almost arguably a mountain bike trail in the last 7 of the 10 miles, it really does. It just throws in a little bit of flair for everything, and it makes it really entertaining.
That's great. Mitch, what do you find that you love about the course? What makes it unique for you, or what keeps you coming back each year?
Yeah, I mean, I guess first and foremost, James and the team do a incredible job, putting it on. It's fun. It's good vibes the whole time. Everybody's there to compete, but also, there to have a good time first and foremost. Compared to the first year, like Dan said, there was or James, there was a big section of road at the end, which is, tends to suit someone like me, who's a little bit bigger, can push the pedals a little bit harder. But the new course, which I really like, is your tire selection. What bike, right? The guy that got and maybe this is getting into it, second place in the 100-mile, right, rode a mountain bike. There's advantages to that through some of those sections when it's chunky and it's loose. And one of the things that makes it interesting for a person like me and helps me put some thought into it is there's a lot of very short, sharp hills. I'm 6'4", nearly 6'5", 200 pounds. It makes it a really big challenge to race, someone of Dan's caliber through there. So you got to try to plan a little bit when the gravel's smoother and faster, rather than through that chunky stuff where he's so good.
Yeah, that's rode a mountain bike, huh? Huh.
That was
Interesting.
that canyon. I forget what it was, but yeah, the old full suspension canyon with aero bars on it.
Yep.
Was the changes in the course just the changes in the end with the gates, or James, was there a total course change this year?
There was 2 sections that we changed. The end, we brought them up and around that sanctuary area, and then I believe we went up towards Felch, so we brought them north. So they missed the original route. Would go from the start about, I think it's maybe 15 miles in. If you kept going straight, that was the original route. Well, I found more gravel to be able to go north and gain an extra like 12 miles out of that. Or maybe it's just under 12, but that gave us the 50 miles, mark, to call, to just make an official Lone Wolf 50. And the gravel that we found up there was just pristine. There's like it's called Fintown Road. I think it's maybe 4 miles, but it's just rolling tree canopy, rolling gravel. And you just kind of get almost distracted up there with how beautiful it is. And that, by doing that, brought us on some pavement. But it's kind of no man's land out there, so you don't even see much traffic. I always try to make it, as remote as possible, just because that was always my biggest concern, was safety and vehicles and good old boys out there and stuff like that. Try to keep people kind of away from all that. But it also created a little bit of dynamic for the group, for people to pack up, and like Mitch said, to get some like roadie backgrounds, a chance at the gravel scene, because just after that paved section is the truck trail, which I think Dan might have been referring to with the boulders in the road, and it's 10 miles of roller coaster chunky gravel. I think there's a 18.5-inch grade out there. Your back tires are kind of spinning to get up some of them, and but yeah, it turned out really well, and that, by making that extra loop, we were actually able to create a 36. So coming back down, tapping into the original route, people were able to take a right turn and head back to the start finish, and that created the 36 mile.
Yeah. That was going to be another question of mine. That is 50 the only offering, or do you have any other distances?
Yep. So we were able to create that 36.
Okay.
And then I know, last year, Jason Lowitz kind of chimed in a few times to me, like, "Hey, you gonna make a 100 miler, for the endurance guys, and maybe a 100 miler?" And I was like, "Well, we can make a 100 miler, but it takes you across a couple highways and stuff like that." And like I said, with the safety thing, I said, "Well, let's just do 2 laps, which would be cool for spectating and stuff like that too."
Did you do 100 mile?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yep. I think we had 12 guys show up for that.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah,
the one thing that that stands out to me is that it's predominantly a 50-mile race, and I mean, all of you know that everything just seems to be getting longer and longer and longer, and it's kind of, I don't know, it's getting ridiculous in my mind.
You can say it's annoying.
It's annoying, yeah, it sure is. But to just be like, no, 50 is our sweet spot. That's what we do, and that's what the majority of the racers like to participate in. And then to be able to have a course dynamic enough within 50 miles, where obviously there's going to be packs breaking up and selections made. I think that's pretty not only unique, but pretty cool to offer to, I don't know, your area, or to any racer that wants to take part in it.
Yeah, I was definitely glad to see this year people kind of work together, because the first year it was kind of boggling, where you in gravel you expect to be able to work together, create some kind of packs out there, but as soon as people hit the truck trail, it was just a line of people, and everybody was all by themselves. There were 68 people riding by themselves out there. I'm like, man, you guys got to work together and stuff. But I think the only 2 people that might have stayed together on the first year was Dan and Mark Kranz, and and they laid it down, but for obvious reasons, nobody really, kept up with those guys.
I did my best. I still
Yeah,
have
you did.
I have nightmares on Kearney Lake Road still.
That is tough. And I mean, I know I have some hard lessons of things like that happening early on like 100-mile race, and then you're by yourself for 75 miles, and it's a long 75 miles. But no, I do like the idea of just 50 miles going out, riding hard. You finish before it's dinner time. I mean, that's another positive. But very cool. So yeah, I do want to know more about, I mean, I wanted to hear about Lone Wolf. I've definitely heard of it, but I don't know enough about it. And again, I think being downstate, it's just, I think it's just a proximity thing of there's a lot of races down here. I do make my way up into the UP a couple times a year, but not any further than Marquette. So I think the Lone Wolf, I knew of it as a UP gravel race, but it just seemed a little bit distant to me. So one, I think this is cool to get to know about it more. But then James, you reached out a couple days ago and you said, "Hey, Trevor, this race has been going on a few years. There's been some repeaters, some heavy hitters, but this year there was a cool story about the I guess the race at the front." And you said it more than just me and my buddies need to hear this story. I feel like this would be a good story for the podcast. And I was like, heck yeah, let's talk about it. So we kind of brushed over it a little bit, but Dan, you have won this race each of the years that it's been offered, correct?
Yep. Made it 3 in a row this year.
All right. The hat trick.
Yeah. I referred to it as the turkey. So
the turkey. Well, I mean, here's the issue though. You can't not come back now. I mean, I think you have to keep coming back until you don't achieve the same result.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, it was awfully close this year. I was pushed, I think about the first year that I did it and I rode with Mark Kranz. Mark is a great athlete and a very, very accomplished endurance athlete.
Oh yeah.
And the guy is just strong as heck. And riding with him, it was like, whew, this is a legit race on my hands. And it came down to a sprint. And knowing that he was more of an endurance guy, I felt comfortable being able to take him in the sprint. And lucky for me, I was able to. But the second year, it was kind of, Mark's not here this year. So then I got to race with Mitch and a few other guys that hung with us for a little while. But Mitch and I broke away. And I think the hills kind of got to Mitch. And by about mile 40, Mitch threw up the white flag and said, Dan, I'm pretty shot. If you want to keep going on your own, you're more than welcome. So
Hold on, Dan. Mitch, is this how you remember the story? I want to make sure and give you a chance to pop in.
Yeah. If there's one thing I can't call Dan a liar, like I said, I don't know if you want to disclose your weight, Dan, but it's what do we say? It's like 3,200 feet in 50 miles, and it's all short and sharp. So when you're a 200-pound guy like myself, like Dan said, there was a few attacks early on. And Dan put one hard one in at the start of the truck trail. I think we should rename it Teaters Trail or something, I suspect. I was the only one able to kind of go with him. So him and I kind of laid the gas down through those next 9 miles. Feeling pretty good. I think Dan may have let up on the gas a little bit over the top, a few of them, to let me hang in there. We got on the short section of road, and once we hit there's a long road climb that goes into the 2-track. I was absolutely on the limit and said, I'm going to hold you back. Just go ahead and send it. So, one of the cool things I like about this race is, Dan and I, we've known each other for many years, and during the summer we besides the summer, Dan, but we ride at least once or twice a week together. So we've known each other and raced against each other, and kind of know each other's advantages, we'll say. So
it's obvious that the kind of that section that Mitch, you had a little bit of trouble with. Dan is a little more suited for that type of terrain.
Yep.
and then what was it? So Dan, you were by yourself for the end there, and then you just finish it off by yourself in 2022.
Yeah. Yeah. In 22. Yeah. About the last 10 miles or so. Once Mitch said, if you want to go, I went ahead and put power down on the longer climb and just rode in by myself. But this last one was a little bit more of a test.
Well, hold on. I mean, so I appreciate that you started with year 1, year 2, because that kind of set the stage to maybe what I don't know, if someone say like Mitch had a few friends and said, "Hey, I think we can have a few tactics here, and maybe this is where we beat Dan, or this is where we beat Dan." I don't know. Did something like that happen this year?
That's precisely what happened. Yeah. No, the guys that ride in the Green Bay area, like Mitch said, we often ride together. A lot of the training rides, we'll coordinate, and we'll make sure that we'll bring a few of us with, even if we're not on the same team. And it really does make for a good cycling community. And we get to know how each other ride. That's the interesting part is, and all of a sudden Mitch knows my weaknesses and he knows where I'm good. And it's no secret what he and his teammates are good at. So preparing for a race, knowing who's going to be there, that's the extra element. And when you're outnumbered 4-1 at the start line, you just kind of, oh boy, you just got to swallow and say, here we go. And yeah, Mitch and his teammates, they put together a plan. It was very obvious. And that plan was executed very well. I want to say the attack started. Well, I mean, one of your guys, Kurt, he went right away, right out of the parking lot. He rode the first climb pretty hard and kind of strung things out. And then next thing you know, a couple miles later, we start attack after attack after attack. And these guys are literally just going one right after another. And there were a couple of big haymakers in there that they went for the knockout punch. I still don't know how I countered every single one of them. I can say I had good legs. I can say I just gained a couple extra watts with the beauty of the area and that cool, crisp north air. But yeah, man, they pushed me to my limit on some sections of that course. And
well, I do want to bring Mitch into this because that's your perspective. Mitch, are you comfortable letting us all know what the plans were or what the plan was? Unless you want to try it again next year. I mean, you can maybe hold some cards close to your chest, but
we all know Dan's a real good racer, and it wasn't going to be a surprise. So yeah, we have a Pete's Garage group chat going, and the big thing is we're all watching registration, day to day as we're encroaching the ends. Like Dan said, who's racing, right? And we're not seeing Dan sign up. We're not seeing Dan sign up. And registration closes. No Dan Teaters, right? And we had a guy, another local rider, races on Dan's team actually, send a note, said, "Hey, I forgot to register. Can I still sign up?" And so I sent James a note and said, "Hey, my buddy Matt wants to sign up. Is that cool?" And he's like, "Yep, no problem. Just show on up and try to hold Dan's wheel the best you can."
You're like, "What?"
And I was like, "Yeah, oh, great. So now we know Dan's coming." But we kind of figured so. It's a good race that suits him very well, obviously. But yeah, I got my buddy Kyle, Kurt, and Nick were there. We kind of said, let's make it hard from the start. And any opportunity where your legs feel good enough, try to take a flyer off the front. We got some pretty big motors, we'll say, and if we can create a gap, even through the hills, a few of us, at riding your own pace could likely stay away. Years ago in the Bear, Dan, myself, and another one of my teammates, Kyle, the three of us got off the front and just kind of motored away from the group. And, that's a course that suits a bigger rider a little bit better, bar a couple technical sections that we got to survive on Dan's wheel. But that was the whole thing, attack. I sent one pretty early that ended up shelling one of our teammates. Another one, Nick, caught on our team on Pete's Garage there, caught my wheel. And I thought to myself, this is the break we need. So me and my buddy Nick were up the road, kind of leading into a mild climb. And I think, Dan, you must have worked pretty hard to close that one down. Because we probably had 40 yards, 50 yards on you, and felt good. So Dan closed that one down. There were a couple other riders, Bruce from Marquette, I think James, that's one of your friends. He was, I think he got second place at Ortashore single speed this year, right? Real strong rider. Another Dan from lower downstate that he ended up closing up some gaps too. But yeah, as soon as Dan was back on the wheel, Kyle took a flyer. I think one of the, Bruce kind of chased that one down, and we just kept going and going until, it was really the intention to try and get Kyle up the road. He's probably got the biggest motor out of everybody. So it was kind of on me to just continually attack. So I kind of wrote my own ticket by mile 40 that I was going to be gone. But no, it was awesome, fun. But
and so was there a moment? Were you trying to get past that hilly section around mile 40, or were you, or Kyle, I guess, was your go-to person to really go head to head with Dan?
Yep. We had two thoughts. If we could soften Dan that he couldn't get away from us on the truck trail, we likely could hang till the end. Like you said, the 2-track at the end's more mountain bike suited, and that's Dan's bread and butter. But we're technically competent riders. We felt, it's flat enough. If you can get up the first hill, besides the last hill at the end, you can hang in there. So we wanted to soften his legs by the truck trail. Best case is we have one or two riders, a couple minutes up going into the truck trail, and then just do your best to ride Dan's wheel as he tries to catch up. So, and
then with all that said, where was the selection made? How, Dan, where did you know that you had this race won?
Oh boy. I think once we got off the truck trail, there were some pretty tough sections on that part of the race that I actually drove myself. And Kyle put in a really hard attack that I think we were doing about 35 miles an hour. And once we got off of that section and we were together as a group of 6, I kind of thought it might be okay if I just sit in and hang out on the road until we hit the last off-road section. But really, I didn't know what everybody else had in the tank. I know my legs were starting to hurt, and it wasn't until we made that initial climb that Mitch had referenced, and then we got into that 2-track where I let my mountain bike skills take over and just kind of get up off the saddle a little bit, let the bike dance under me, and just ride hard. And really, Kyle was the only one to stay on my wheel. And I thought, boy, I'm going to drag him right to the finish and I'm going to get killed in the sprint. But we hit a couple, there's a couple other short little climbs in there that one of them came up and bit Kyle pretty hard and it got his hamstring. And he said after that, he's like, I just couldn't pedal for a handful of minutes. And that's really where I got my gap. And I think I had almost a minute gap on everybody at one point, and that was enough to keep me away for the rest of the race. So,
And that was pretty close to the finish, correct?
yeah, that was with at least 4 or 5 miles to go.
Okay. Yeah.
That's when that kind of under the radar Dan, you're the guy there, Dan, what is it? Coronac?
Corianic?
Yeah, Cornick. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, he kind of shot from the back. He obviously had a bunch in the tank. Because even like Geschel came over, and when he came through, because the top four, I got it right here. Dan, Teaters, got Coronac, that was 25 seconds behind him.
Oh, wow.
And then Kyle at 32 seconds. So that was, Dan got him by 7 seconds on second place. And then Geschel came through 43 seconds after. So there was less than a minute on top four.
So it was close.
Yeah,
it was close. So there wasn't really necessarily a comfortable gap. There was a gap, but not super comfortable.
Yeah. And Geschel wasn't familiar. He's never pre-roaded or anything. So he even said, he goes, oh, I thought we had like 5 or 6 miles left. He goes, not that I could have done much, but which I don't believe. But
yeah, he's first time I've raced directly with him. I've seen him, at Ordashore, and very, very strong rider. He is.
Yeah.
Nice guy too.
Yep. Yeah, he's a cool rider.
I love to hear these stories, especially with local races, most of the races I do are smaller local races, but you can still, man, to be able to like try out tactics and to be part of that competition, and just it's just great. I love that, to hear that, it doesn't matter if it's Unbound versus, probably Unbound would be even almost impossible to be able to implement something like this, like what you did last weekend. And this gives you the opportunity to play around, have fun, know the other riders, know the course, and it just makes it way more enjoyable.
Well, I'll tell you what, Trevor, this kind of goes back to your comment about it being a 50-mile race, and kind of where's that sweet spot. And, I think with the gravel races and so many races being longer events, those, I don't want to say they're not races, because they're races, but how racy can you be? And what I really enjoy is those distances where you can throw attacks, you can be aggressive. You have to have a strategy. You have to have a strategy outside of, I just got to conserve.
Yeah.
Right. Sit for 100 miles and wait for something to happen.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So, I think that sweet spot, between 50 and 80 miles or so, I think it's such a good distance for this kind of racing. It allows you to be aggressive if you want to go that route. You can still ride conservative, but the race itself, it just is so much more interesting than just sitting on each other's wheel all day and just trying to work together to get to the finish. You're trying to shell people off your wheel, and it's more of a race.
It's more of a race and less of just a straight out suffer fest, and who can suffer the longest. And that is what some of these longer races have kind of turned into. Mitch, on this side of it, is there anything that maybe you and your teammates or your friends would do differently next year? Just stop listening, Dan.
Put me on mute. There you go.
All right, but I guess like for this year, do you think that there's something you could have done a little better, or was it just the stronger man won?
The stronger man won for sure. I think having Bruce and Dan there, Bruce especially, he closed some pretty good gaps. Hard to, he obviously earned his position. The easy answer is bring more friends. Like I said, that we could lay more attacks. No, I was pretty happy with the race, frankly. I think we had a fun time. We executed a plan. Ultimately, we figured like I said, if we could be with Dan in the group at the end of the truck trail, we could get into the last section and just let it play out. Dan was kind and didn't mention my last feeble attack to try and break his spirit there. But yeah, I got up the hill, and I figured if I could get up the hill, maybe they'll catch me and I can hang in there. But everybody flew past me. I was out of gas. But
now, in all honesty, Mitch, knowing that you were dangling just off of us on the truck trail, and you made contact again, I was really impressed, but I knew your legs were dead.
Yep.
So when
So
you
at the
made that
very
last
end,
effort
yeah.
on the road, I was not worried. I did not see a reason to go chase it down, and I knew that we would do the damage on the next tough section.
So this is like brings in like the benefit of knowing who's riding against you, and then the not benefit of the person riding against you knowing you really well too.
Yep, exactly. We were on a road section, so I looked back and I saw Dan was, I don't know, what do you think, 8 yards behind me. I think you might have been second wheel, so I just opened it up, and I opened up, what do you think, 25, 30 seconds at the bottom of the hill. Got up to the top. Dan came around me right at the very peak of it, so I stood on it, and they were just had an extra gear versus what I had. But yeah, it was interesting. So like I said, we put a tax in on the truck trail, so I ended up getting dropped with maybe 2 miles to go on the truck trail, but never lost more than 45 seconds. And as soon as we hit the flat road, just motored back up and got the group back together. So if there's anything James wants to do to flatten the course, that would be okay. Maybe that would help.
I don't work for the county anymore.
Yeah. See there, you get a big truck through there. But
It was awesome course this year. Last year it was a little bit soft. Like they had graded it. It seemed like maybe 2 weeks prior. It didn't really firm up or set up, but this year there was a ton of hard pack lines. When I was marking it, I was really excited to see that, knowing that the pace would pick up a little bit. I didn't go down the truck trail in my vehicle. I didn't have the time to be able to pull that off, but the truck trail is a truck trail. But I did, going back to like me and my buddy Bruce standing there listening to you guys kind of go back and forth about your strategy and stuff. I just loved it when, Mitch goes, we attacked Dan. I was like, where at? And he goes, the whole time.
I looked at my Strava data, and you could see, your spike in your power, and over the course of whatever 45 minutes in the middle of the race, I had like 24 separate times where I tried to go. So like I said, we in between Kyle, Kyle's trying to conserve a little bit of energy. Our other partner Nick, that kind of made it up the road with us, he's a bigger dude too, and I don't know if Dan noticed, he was kind of hanging off the back for most of it. So kind of tried to be the best teammate I could and just keep going. So
I think I actually rode about half that race looking over my shoulder.
Yep.
Just waiting.
That's great.
See, if we made Dan nervous, that's a win for us. Me personally,
Well, I think there's something to be said about even if the tactics didn't work correctly, knowing that you did as much as you could. And that's it's tough about, like, maybe keeping a little in the tank, or knowing that there's something that, maybe you attacked too much, but thinking that you did it right, and Dan just overcame. I mean, I think that's a really cool story. And it's also, I mean, it's really cool to hear both perspectives, and then also just the pure, like, fun sportsmanship between the two of you. I mean, it's not like you wanted to beat Dan, but I don't feel like it was anything personal.
Oh, no,
Yeah.
absolutely not. Like I said, we've been on plenty of training rides together where we've beat each other up and weighted and lots of stuff. So it's always fun.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I appreciate this, and I'm gonna wrap it up here in a second. But I do want to ask all of you about I feel it's important to talk about maybe what's on the other side from the pointy end of the race. I'm assuming that there's plenty of participants, racers, riders that come to this event that don't care at all about tactics and riding hard. James, do you think that there's still something to offer those who just want to go up and appreciate that area this time of year? Like, definitely. Like, are you? Yeah. Talk about that.
Yeah, I mean that's basically the whole idea from the start is, I'm not a racer, nor will I ever be able to be a racer, and I'm fine with that because I put it like even last year at Moran, I did the 66 and I was like, all right, I'm just going to hold on to the fastest group I can hold on to, and I was able to do that for about an hour at 18 miles an hour, and I've never experienced anything like that, like pain wise. And I was like, well, this, I don't think I'll ever be there. But it's the ride for me. And then to create a race to where you can create some competition, because I love the gravel strategy and camaraderie. And that's been my favorite part of the gravel scene. Especially at the head, the start finish line, being able to hang out and then to see a group come in, and like you were saying, there's no animosity. People are doing their strategies out there, having fun with it. Even these elite guys, it's just super cool. And then, attracting. It's just kind of cool to, especially it being in Iron Mountain, like you said, it's a little bit disconnected from Lower Michigan, but it at some point it kind of ties all the way around to Wisconsin. Especially looking at the heat maps of registration, this goes almost straight down to Chicago for us. And then we get a couple blips from Lower Michigan. But it still ties, the Upper Peninsula racers to some new racers out of Green Bay and even further south, and a couple from, out west a little bit. So it's kind of cool to see it just kind of collaborate a little bit, because especially the Michigan gravel scene, I've always just been super into that and love, all these local people, and just kind of under the radar, even like Wakely and stuff like that. It would be really cool to like see, some more people from downstate Michigan come over and kind of go head to head with these Wisconsin folk.
Yeah, definitely.
We could learn what real suffering feels like.
There's strong people everywhere, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Well, this is great. I feel like this was a huge benefit for me to hear more about the Lone Wolf and just know, I don't know, like I said, it was just maybe it's just the distance and not being close to it, but it definitely seems like something I want to experience. And like you said, like the camaraderie and it's everything you're telling me, it seems like what I would like to experience in a true gravel race. And I think that you're hitting the nail on the head there, and I hope it continues. And yeah, real quick, I was gonna ask you guys, has weather been good each year? Because I feel like that time of year it's a real crapshoot. I was just thinking I'd love to go up there, but then I'm like, well, if the weather sucks, I'm not even gonna worry about it.
I mean, year one, it was rainy, but the temperature was real good.
Okay.
So it was wet, and actually it kind of firmed up the course, kept it really nice. Year two, sunny, cool, just the epitome of fall gravel. I think we started in the 30s, maybe ended in the high 30s and mid 40s. It was lovely. And then this year was kind of a mix of everything. We saw sun, we had sprinkles, a little bit of puddles. It was great.
So kind of,
and just to go back to your previous comment, about coming up and doing the race. Iron Mountain's building a lot of mountain bike trails. James and a lot of his friends and family have had a lot to do with it. You could really make a weekend of it. Come ride a lot of really fun, varied trails, and then ride your bike on a Sunday.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic. Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you just for talking about the race, your experience, the tactics, which sounded like a lot of fun, and James, thank you for kind of putting this together, putting the race together, and getting us all in the same Zoom room. This is really cool to hear
thank
this
you.
story.
I was discussing it with my buddy Bruce Lang, and he's like, man, what we overheard those guys talking about would make a really good podcast. And I was like, he goes, you know any? And I was like, well, I kind of know Trevor, and it would kind of be an honor to see if you had time. And I really appreciate you getting us on there because, like I said, that story kind of had to be told, especially this year, with what was going on up front there. I wish I could have put a water bottle on the bike to listen to it.
Yeah.
Going on.
Well, cool. Do you guys get on this side of the state at all for any races, or you stick mainly in the UP?
Yeah, no, I've been over. What did I do? I did Barrier Bay last year.
Okay.
And we had some snow and some pretty inclement weather for that one.
Oh yeah.
But I compare that race to Lone Wolf, and outside of kind of the same sharp, kind of steep climbs, that's like hero dirt over there versus some of the chunky stuff we have in this race. But the level of competition there is just through the roof, So yeah, I mean, some of the races down in the lower side of Michigan, God, I'd love to get over there and do some of those gravel races. I wish we had a series like that here in Wisconsin, but maybe one day.
Yeah. Well, I'll definitely have to make my way over on that side. Mitch, you mentioned Ore to Shore. Do you do Ore to Shore or?
Yep. Done it a number of years. Yep. Managed second single speed this year. So.
Oh wow, man! Sounds like
who doesn't do Ore to Shore? I mean, really.
That's true.
If you're from the Midwest, yeah.
That's true.
I love that race. That's such a good event.
Yeah. Well, so I've done it last couple years, and I'll be there every year if I can. So hopefully next year we can link up and.
Yeah, what is it? This little, right?
Oh, there you go.
Man.
Nice work.
Yeah. Well,
just
cool.
just so for two, I keep her right at the desk.
Oh,
there it is. 22.
Great, guys. I'll let you get back to work, unfortunately, but thanks for jumping on and telling your story, and yeah, really appreciate it.
I appreciate your time, Trevor. It was fun.
Thanks, Trevor.
Yep. Thanks for having us.
The Dirty Chain Podcast is a Michigan Midpack Media production in partnership with KOM Cycling, the source for your bike accessories and necessities. Connect with us on Instagram and Facebook at Dirty Chain Podcast. Email dirtychainpodcast@gmail.com. If you are enjoying the podcast, please leave us a rating and review on whatever platform you use to listen. Audio editing and original music by myself, Trevor Gibney. Thank you to James and Mitch and Dan for joining me on this episode. And thank you all for listening to the Dirty Chain Podcast. And as always, keep your chain clean, but get your chain dirty. We will see you in the Midpack.